we looked around and we thought, gosh, this should really be a movie. I mean, the courage of Bonhoeffer, the way his theology develops, as it does in all of us. We don't have a reawakening spiritually in Christianity and suddenly know everything. We're shaped by so many things. And to see how he was shaped by the circumstances. I mean, he was young when he had his reawakening, which we believe happened in Harlem. And then to see the challenges that he had. I mean, they were just insurmountable, the crushing evil of Nazism. So I think what really attracted us was how Bonhoeffer, if you study him, he keeps drawing you closer to Jesus Christ. He keeps pointing you upwards. And I think that was, what we were. And we were also seeing an American church that was kind of asleep at the wheel. It needed to be awakened, whatever the word is, awakened. So we just felt this character, this wonderful martyr, would have it all in a movie and would be a great story.
Hello and welcome to the Alan Phelan Scoop.
I'm Anne McElhinney.
And I'm Phelan McAleer. So today, we just want to say we've been following Hurricane Helene.
Especially on X, by the way, which has been really a great resource to find out what's going on. And our dear friend, John Nolte, who's in North Carolina, John Nolte, who's the brilliant writer for Breitbart. He's in Boone, North Carolina, which is very close to Asheville. And he's been sending letters or putting up photographs and giving people updates. But we know that Asheville is obviously one of the worst places that's mostly affected. And there are children and people trapped in houses. There's people running out of food. It's a very, very bad situation, and we're thinking about all of our friends and everyone who's in that area in North Carolina and also in Florida. People have been affected, so thinking about you guys and praying for you for your safety. This is a very shocking hurricane, very shocking storm.
Yeah, we're recording this hopefully by the time you see this,
things will have
improved.
Yeah.
We really hope so. I saw some talk about another storm coming.
No, I saw that. Yeah, people have said that. I know it's
please, no.
Yeah.
So please, we're thinking about you all. Just let you know that.
Yeah,
and
very much so.
Hope we're bringing some joy to you in these tough times. So on the show today, we're going to talk about the first stop of our October 7 campus tour. It was at Princeton last week, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. We're going to bring you some reactions to that performance, and we're going to bring you updates about our very special performance at UCLA on the anniversary of the attack. Yeah, so our October 7 play is going to be in UCLA on October 7th.
And we're also going to be talking later on to the producers of a new movie about Bonhoeffer,
Dietrich
Bonhoeffer, whose faith and fight against the Nazis, the actual proper Nazis, is an example to everyone, and it's really worth hanging on for that interview. Really amazing people.
Yes. And we look at why New York Mayor Eric Adams might be the next Donald Trump.
Shockingly.
Yes. And paging stupid journalists. Israel is not just facing threats from Gaza, but also from Hezbollah in Lebanon. We saw the beginnings of this current conflict in Lebanon, when we were there back in November last year. Of course, the media is blaming it all on Israel, and maybe it's not because they're stupid, but for another reason. We bring you the true story of the beginnings of the war in Lebanon as it's happening now.
And and finally, we're going to just briefly look at these shocking numbers that have been revealed by ICE about who exactly has come in this massive wave of illegal migrants that have come into the United States. Who are they? Now we actually have quite a lot of information about who they are.
And you'll find you won't believe how many of the people coming in have actually murdered someone.
Yeah.
Actually, not.
Yeah.
Not
just small and petty crime, but actual murderers. How many murderers are in your midst?
There's a little test for you. Have a think now how many illegal immigrants in the last year have actually murdered someone. In the last couple of years, actually, have actually murdered someone. They've come in, they've been processed, that they've been found to be murderers and then released into society. How many do you think the American government have done? So we'll get to that at the end. We're going to start now with our October 7th play, the tour of college campuses, which last week was in Princeton, in beautiful
Princeton.
And it went amazing. It was last Tuesday. We had Jeff Gurner directing, who played Zaki in the off-Broadway run. He was directing it. Funny, it was different from New York in that it was a staged reading, a slightly dramatized stage reading. And, there were no sound effects or limited sound effects, limited lighting changes. It was stripped down to just the words.
Which becomes even more powerful because then people are just focused on the words of these people who lived through this awful, awful day, this massacre. And it's extremely powerful. It's almost like in some ways it's more powerful than with the sound effects.
Well, to be honest, I thought I'm going to be bored with this because I've seen the play about 700 times by now, and
yes.
And just to remind you, October 7 is a verbatim play. We went to Israel after October 7 in November and interviewed about 20 people. We took 14 of their stories. People from the dance party, people who rescued people who fought back, people who lost family members, people who spent 36 hours in a bomb shelter, people who were wounded, people who treated the wounded, and brought those stories together in a really dramatic retelling of that day. It's that day from multiple viewpoints, and
Well, I think it was really appreciated, by the way, by the people who saw it in Princeton. I think they really appreciated it. I want to go to that now. Just let's listen to what the actual audience who saw the performance at Princeton, here's what they had to say.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a senior at Princeton. I just, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you. This is probably one of the most meaningful productions I've been to in my life.
I thought it was really emotional. It was touching. I hadn't really followed a whole lot of what happened on October 7th, so I thought it was honestly really gut-wrenching to see and hear the testimonies of what people had to say.
The play was really excellently done. I genuinely believe that, and I appreciate all the intentionality and clearly the research that went into it. I think any campus, no matter what its ideological composition is or its demographical composition, they all have a lot to learn from it. I appreciated this perhaps more than a standard play, purely because I feel like I got to know each of the characters a little bit more than if they were in full costume.
It's so important. It's just really important. And my initial thoughts are I have a son at Cornell and a son at Johns Hopkins, and I'm really going to speak to them and see if there's a way for them to bring this play to those universities too. I had been to the Nova exhibit in New York. I've been to Israel twice since October 7th, but still just hearing, the personal stories was very impactful.
I think it's definitely really heartbreaking. It's a very deep story, but I also think it's just very important for people to see, especially my age, just to understand what happened.
I follow Batya Ungar-Sargon, and I saw her interview with Anne, and I heard about the play. I thought it sounded fantastic. I wanted to support it. Knew it was probably not going to be a feel-good play, but October 7th, like I said, it broke my heart, and I want to know that even more disappointing than that was America's reaction. And just the explosion of anti-Semitism and just the horrible treatment of Jewish people, it's concentrated in some of these academic areas. It's very concerning.
I'm very happy that I did. I couldn't understand how it was going to play out, but it was amazing, ingenious, amazing, and I really hope this play is able to reach especially the college campuses, the students, and maybe make them aware of certain things that educate them. More so than make them aware, educate them because they're not educated. I think it struck a chord more so because you knew that was really what they were thinking, not what they weren't interpreting what they were thinking, that they said exactly their feelings and their experiences.
I thought it was intense. I just really enjoyed it. It really hit home.
I saw the play the first time because of its title and because of its life. And the second time is because I think it was important enough to see again. And I'll just tell you that because of the staging, I guess, because I saw it in New York with a different feeling, that this was a little bit more focused, a little more hitting home. And the second time, I think they go a little deeper.
We had a lot of people, actually, some people who had seen it in New York when we did the 6-week run there, who come for, especially for it. We had people who were coming for the first time. A very, very nice mix, actually, of both students and locals.
I love what Jeff had to say. I love that last quote, because actually it kind of extraordinary, because he basically said that it hit home even more, that actually this staged reading hit him harder than seeing the full production in New York. So very grateful for everyone who came to Princeton, and that kind of segues into the fact that we are just days away from October 7th, and we are going to be marking the first anniversary of this massacre with a performance of the play at UCLA here in Los Angeles. And in fact, next week's podcast will be packed filled with video and film from our performance there. So you don't want to miss next week's podcast.
Yes, it's a big production, and we got the actor Kevin Weisman, who you may know from Alias. He's playing Itamar, who is a police officer who left his home that morning with a pistol and 9 bullets. He killed 2 terrorists. He rescued dozens of people, actually. He saved the lives of many, many people. He saved the life of a rabbi, of an off-duty soldier, of a couple out walking. And then he killed 2 terrorists, which in turn probably saved multiple lives as well. Then he rescued a family from a rooftop, and we interviewed the family. Kevin, we're very honored to have Kevin on taking part. I mean, we're very honored to have all the actors. It really is an all-star cast.
Yeah.
From LA's finest actors. And I spoke to Kevin before we came on, and he wanted to say this. He said to us,
"I truly believe that the resilience of the survivors of the October 7th terror attack deserve to be honoured," he said. "By participating in this play, I hope to keep the conversation about the people of Israel's indefatigable character, honour and faith alive, not just for those beautiful souls directly affected by this tragic day, but for future generations as well."
Couldn't have said it better myself, actually. And actually, that was one of the motivations of us going to Israel, was, the way they talk about journalism being the first rough draft of history. We honestly felt people were not writing that rough first draft, that the story of October 7 was disappearing, that people were talking about October 8th, they were talking about the war in Gaza. We saw that in Ireland, where we were. All they wanted to do was talk about Israel's retaliation without talking about what they were going to retaliate about, why was anything happening on October 8th and October 9th, etc., etc.
And now, and people were they were the one part of the story they're missing out is the reason it all started, which was October 7th, and what was done to people, innocent people, kids at a party. Yes. By the way, peacenik kids at a party.
Yeah, liberal kids at a party. It's important, and that's why we want to bring it to the college campuses. It's important that the words October 7th are in every headline. Every headline.
And I think bringing it to the college campuses is especially important, given the number of young people who are of similar age, similar mentality, very similar kind of kids in every possible way, who were massacred, hunted down and massacred at a party. And the fact that their counterparts, their colleagues on campuses across the planet haven't been protesting about the deaths and the massacre of those people, and instead taking the side of the killers is beyond belief. And so these colleges these kids need really drastically, urgently, crucially need an education.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be doing, and that's what we're bringing them. So we'll next week you'll hear all about what happens at UCLA.
Yes. So now, Anne, we're getting to your favorite part of the show, actually, something that means a lot to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we've just found, we just recently discovered that actually that the life of Bonhoeffer, of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, is going to be made into a big, massive, Hollywood movie, has been made into a movie, and is coming out in November. And we're going to talk in a few minutes to the people who have produced that movie. But honestly, the book itself, which was a huge success at the time, sold over 1 million copies. I've read it. It's unbelievable, written by Eric Metaxas, our dear friend Eric Metaxas, which is just the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, quite extraordinary. The book itself is like a miracle. It took him 10 years to write. And this man, this very young man, intellectual, spiritual, giant, actually, spiritual
I
giant.
just want to be clear, we're talking about Bonhoeffer here, not Eric Metaxas.
About
Although Eric Metaxas is an intellectual and spiritual giant. He's a good friend of ours and has been on the show
But
many
Dietrich
times.
Bonhoeffer, this idea that he, this intellectual, a very prayerful man, a very, theological man, and that eventually, through obviously living through these extraordinary times in history, decided to join with other intellectuals to assassinate Hitler. Obviously, their attempts were foiled, and he was executed. It's an extraordinary book. The book itself is, as I said, it's some kind of a miracle. And I can't recommend it more. It's funny, in the interview that you're going to hear, one of the producers, says that the book is very readable. I wasn't going to correct him, but I would warn people who think about reading Eric Metaxas' book. It's extraordinary, but I would not call it an easy read. I think it's pretty tough going, but absolutely brilliant.
It's a long read too. I mean, I remember you reading it on your Kindle, and you would look down.
Yeah, I'd read for a few weeks, and then I looked down and it was like 10%, and I thought, oh God, because that's the one thing with a Kindle you never realize, because with a Kindle you don't realize how fat the book is. And I have to say, I am that actual person who would look at books and say that's too big of a book for me to read.
Yes,
I have done that in the past, and I have been criticised for it in the past. I have a very funny story about that actually. When I was in college and I was studying English, and there were a variety of books that were available to be studied. You didn't have to do all of them, and one of them was Middlemarch,
big book,
which is huge, massive, thick book by George Eliot. And I decided, the intellectual giant that I am, I looked at it and thought, right, I'm not going to do a big book, fat book like that. I'll do a thin one. And then I met the professor, who I was very fond of, and he said, what have you chosen? And I said, well, I'm not going to do Middlemarch. And then he looked at me with that kind of, it was a mixture of pity and disdain, mostly contempt, though. I think mostly contempt, which I really hated.
Which was worse, the pity or contempt?
Though it was a most awful cocktail. He just looked at. He was really disgusted with me, but to make it even worse, he said, "Really, you're not going to do Middlemarch by George Eliot, who basically he adored." And he said, "You know what George Eliot said? If we had a keen vision and feeling for all ordinary human life, it would be like hearing the grass grow and a squirrel's heartbeat, and we should die of that roar which lies on the other side of silence. As it is, the best of us walk about well wadded in stupidity." So that was the quote he gave me. Needless to say, I did read Middlemarch. Middlemarch is an absolute miracle, and I'd highly recommend Middlemarch. It's an incredible novel. And I was shamed, I have to admit, I was shamed into reading it.
And you were no longer well wadded in stupidity.
Oh no, I'd say I'm still well wadded in stupidity, but George Eliot wrote like that. But can you imagine being confronted with the professor that you liked best in the whole world, and him to say that to you, looking at you with that contempt, that you were hoping to get the exact opposite kind of reaction from him?
So that was Middlemarch. I believe I have read...
Middlemarch is unbelievable.
What's the other George Eliot book? Let me just
There's loads of George Eliot books.
I have actually read one George Eliot book. Let me see.
You must have read Middlemarch, Philip.
I must, yeah. George Eliot books. This is what Wikipedia is for. Middlemarch, Silas Marne.
In the Mill and the Floss.
I think I read The Mill and the Floss.
The Mill and the Floss is quite short.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
See, there you go.
Yes.
So obviously, we were a match made in heaven.
There you go. All right.
Before we even knew each other. Yeah. So, okay. Should I read Middlemarch then?
I think you should read Middlemarch. You should read Middlemarch. Everyone should read Middlemarch, and let me know what you think.
And I shouldn't be wadded and stupid. If you have read Middlemarch, please put your comments in the comments section on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, but this is a very long way of getting around to the fact that we now are going to go over to the interview we did a few minutes earlier with the producers of the Bonhoeffer movie.
Camille and Emmanuel.
Let's go over to that now.
Yeah. So we're joined now by Emmanuel and Camille Kampouris. They're the producers of the new movie, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. It's the latest release from Angel Studios that you might know from producing The Chosen. Emmanuel is the retired chairman and president of American Standard Companies, which was a global manufacturer. He's the co-founder of the Kairos Journal, which is an online magazine which seeks to educate and support pastors. And Camille, very interestingly, has a background in improvisational comedy. She was a lead puppeteer with Jim Henson's Muppets for 14 years and worked at Sesame Street for 10 seasons until she retired in 1998. I'd love to do the whole interview about that.
Yes.
Yes. But
Yes.
Camille and Emmanuel are now producing movies and documentaries. Welcome to the show, Camille and Emmanuel.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell us about your involvement or your connection with Bonhoeffer before you made this movie.
Where did it all begin?
Well, we actually we were influenced by a book that was written, I think, 13 years ago by Eric Metaxas on Bonhoeffer, and it was a very readable book. I'm sure, because Bonhoeffer was difficult to read. The other books were very deep; you couldn't understand them. He made it very understandable. In fact, it became like a novel. I couldn't put it down. So that was what started it, and we said after a while, Eric was being approached by people from Hollywood, try to make a movie, and they came in and out, and just nothing happened.
Yes.
So one day he asked, he said, "Can you help me?" So we said, "Okay, what we can do?" I thought we just try to fund a script, someone to be a screenwriter to write a script, and then that'll be it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was 12 years ago, and we went through one script, three screenwriters, 2 script doctors, 2 directors before we ended up having a screenplay available to make a movie. It took us 7 years to get there.
It's interesting actually because obviously we know Eric very well, and it's interesting. It took Eric 10 years to write the book, so there's obviously these are it's a big story to tell. What particularly did you love about the book and about Bonhoeffer? What was it that you learned about him that particularly inspired you? I mean, I loved the book myself.
Well, our first love is theological education, which is what we do online. We have Bible Mesh
and
Charis Journal.
You mentioned.
And I think what really attracted us, we're steeped in theology, right? We're so the church fathers and these great heroes of the past.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked around and we thought, gosh, this should really be a movie. I mean, the courage of Bonhoeffer, the way his theology develops, as it does in all of us. We don't have a reawakening spiritually in Christianity and suddenly know everything. We're shaped by so many things. And to see how he was shaped by the circumstances. I mean, he was young when he had his reawakening, which we believe happened in Harlem. And then to see the challenges that he had. I mean, they were just insurmountable, the crushing evil of Nazism. So I think what really attracted us was how Bonhoeffer, if you study him, he keeps drawing you closer to Jesus Christ. He keeps pointing you upwards. And I think that was, what we were. And we were also seeing an American church that was kind of asleep at the wheel, it needed to be awakened. The word is awakened. So we just felt this character, this wonderful martyr would have it all in the movie and would be a great story for young, for old.
Yeah, totally. I suppose that's what kept you going over the decade was the need for Bonhoeffer, the need, as you say, an American church asleep at the wheel. I would say they're not asleep at the wheel; they're at the wheel, driving the car over the cliff, almost.
Yeah. Well, it became a calling after a while. I mean, after we realized this was not going to be easy, it wasn't something that we could just our intention was, let's get a good script because Hollywood will, if they do this movie, they'll gut the faith of this man. So let's do a really good script. I mean, we were thinking, how hard could this be? What, take a year or two? 7 years later, we had a script.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that you mentioned that, Hollywood would gut the faith. And we had a very strong reaction to the movie Unbroken, which you'll remember was about
Louis
Zamperini. And we were really looking forward to seeing it. And obviously the book Unbroken, the faith is extraordinary. Obviously everything about his life, everything about his achievements was all about the faith. The movie, of course, decided to remove all of that, basically. It was hardly even mentioned. And really a huge disservice to the man. Horrible treatment. So that was actually, when I heard about the movie, I was immediately, concerned,
worried
that might happen. So obviously this was something that was very important to you. And tell us about that. How did you find somebody to write the script that you knew would be faithful and wouldn't try and do exactly that and make this an action movie rather than a movie about a man of faith?
It just touched me. Yeah, I think, so you want me to answer that?
You answer.
Yeah, well, as I said, we went through 3 screenwriters, and then eventually we met Todd, who lives in New York. And we actually went to Todd we thought we just needed a polish on our last script. So he gave it to Todd to just look at it and give us an opinion. We didn't know if he would ever work with us, if we could afford him. And he gave us so many amazing criticisms. He just said, I think you need to start all over. It's not from the POV of Bonhoeffer. The other characters who are not your lead characters are much more interesting than Bonhoeffer. So, I mean, it was a total rewrite. And so we asked him if he would do it. And he said, well, no. I'm an A-list Hollywood writer. I have blocks of writing. I don't even have a block for 6 months. And we said, well, we'll wait. At this point, it had been like 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then he said, you may not be able to, afford me. Yeah. And we said, well, maybe we can try us. We have to make a few phone calls. And eventually he became our new screenwriter.
Yeah.
So.
It took him also.
It took him about
2 years, huh?
Maybe
but 2 years to complete.
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years because
we had many rewrites. But I mean, we had so many obstacles that were not anything to do creatively. I mean, as soon as we had a script, then we ran up against COVID. And,
oh, God.
Every movie theater in the world shut down. So a lot of our investors said, okay, this is not a good investment in investing in a movie, and they wanted their money back. So we had to raise the money again after COVID. Yeah. So there were lots of
boxes.
Lots of yes. Well, we know a little about that ourselves, having made a couple of movies.
Yes,
it's not easy. What just actually on the movie front, actually, and it's just a quick question that is important. What's the distribution plan then? I know the film's coming out in November. What's the distribution plan? Where is the movie going?
Well, the way we've agreed with Angel Studios is that they will open it up in a minimum of 1,200 theaters throughout the United States.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
On November 22nd, so 1,200. Yeah. And then hopefully it'll ramp up from there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then early December, we hope it'll also begin distribution in Europe as well, starting with England, the UK, and European countries. So
Germany.
And we actually have some South American countries.
Yeah, they have a whole rollout plan, which they
very good.
Yeah, because obviously the book was translated into 19 languages. There's an audience for this film all over the world. Sorry, Phil, you're gonna.
Well, I suppose we live in tumultuous times, and for the first time since the Second World War, Jews are afraid to be openly Jewish in many European and indeed American cities. Now, you obviously started making this film before the recent conflict. Why did you think it was why do you think it's a good time to make a movie about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and have recent events reinforced that belief?
I think, 12 years ago, we were concerned about the American church. We just felt, we traveled a lot with his job, with my job, and we just saw Christianity much more vibrant in places like Africa or China. The underground church was growing. Mm-hmm. And we would come back to America and it would be complacent and sort of fat and happy. And so the first thing we thought 12 years ago is this would be a great movie to wake up the church, to just get them to be the church. I mean, that was Bonhoeffer's whole thing. His first battle was against the church, bringing the church back to the Bible, to God, He believed the church should be visible in the community, speak for those with no voice, and you should be all in, if you're a Christian. That was the first thing. But then, oddly enough, we were very concerned with the rising anti-Semitism that we saw in Europe, in places like France.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, we could have never imagined, what we would be seeing today on college campuses. But, God's timing.
Well, this October 7th thing, I mean, who would have imagined that? I mean, I just can't believe it. It happened. And then few people condemned it. I mean, people say, the naysayers, people say it never happened. I mean, it's just incredible, the situation.
So it's God's timing. That's all we can say, because there were so many obstacles that delayed this film, including we were all ready to shoot in Czech Republic because they were giving us good film incentives, which we needed for our budget,
Yes.
our large budget. So at a certain point, they just canceled and said, because of the Ukrainian war, we may have to divert money to Ukraine. So we're cutting all film incentives.
Wow.
So there we were once again back to square one.
Oh, wow.
So just the timing that it took to get us here, God knew that.
Where did you end up?
2024 was a day.
Where did you end up shooting the movie?
We ended up shooting a movie. It was a 41-day shoot, 30 days in Belgium and 11 days in Ireland.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, interesting. Where in Ireland?
Well, in Limerick, Cork.
And this fantastic beach that looks just like the beach near Finkenwald called Fanor.
Oh, yeah.
Beach.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Oh, I didn't know that. Didn't realize that. Excellent.
Yeah,
I can tell you.
Did you see the movie? Were you able to see the movie?
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to see the movie yet.
But we're going to watch it.
The soccer scene, that soccer scene on the beach, is filmed in Fanor Beach.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Very
Excellent.
good.
Excellent.
So, Camille, you worked in comedy before this, and we're incredibly successful with the Muppets and Sesame Street. In my opinion, comedy is a very difficult medium to be successful in, perhaps the most difficult. Obviously, you brought that perspective to the production. How do you think your unique perspective and Emmanuel, your perspectives helped the show, helped the movie? Because there's a lot of, a movie is lots of opinions. How did you think your unique perspectives helped this production?
I think, well, for me, Manu and I, by the way, Manu was a widower and we met in church and we've been married 32 years and we would have never met because he's an industrialist. I was in the creative world. So he can talk about the business side, which this was such a complicated movie. We could not have done it with someone who wasn't a businessman.
It was, to say that the complication is we were filming in two countries. We had to do the accounting. We had to have, the legal structures were complicated between Belgium and Ireland and the United States. So I had to deal with all these issues, the money issues of
currencies
and all have you. And then also, make sure we were within budget, because that's the other thing is, artistic people tend to forget about the budget.
That's correct.
And we had to focus on the budget.
Yes.
And I was the budget guy. I was every day looking at the budget and what we can afford, what we can't afford. So that was my end of it.
Yeah.
My experience there helped a great deal.
And it's a very important role that.
It's a very important role.
Yes. Yeah, we had lots of battles in our marriage about creative. No, we need the money. No, it's too expensive. But anyway, for creative, I did the creative. I worked on, I would look at the script carefully. The one thing about comedy that teaches you is, a comedic line, if it's 10 words, may not be funny, but if it's 9 words, it might be funny, So you cut it down, or if you put the one word at the end, it's funnier than in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just very much a wordsmith person, very much, it has to really be clear and cutting lines. And Todd is extremely collaborative as a screenwriter. So I weighed in a lot on the script. And then one of the great gifts that we had is that we hired Mano and Todd would bring these incredible talents to us, and we hired great department heads. So when you have great department heads,
we were very fortunate. We had John Matheson, who did Gladiator, and now is doing Gladiator 2.
Wow.
We had his friend who's a set designer,
John Beard.
Beard. We had a lot of very good people helping us. It's so important to have that, because you've got real professionals who've done it before. And so that minimized cost and save time when you have people like that.
Exactly.
What do you hope audiences will get from this film?
So, me personally, I hope that Christians will be Christians, They would just be like the early church fathers, the early Christians, just be all in, no matter the cost. That's kind of was our dream, to raise up men and women like that. And, he was so young when he landed in Germany after Harlem, and all of a sudden, slowly his world completely fell apart. And he persevered.
He was relentless.
Courage.
Relentless courage, stood up for what is right. and was unafraid. This is really he's a great example for today, especially young or old.
Yes.
Especially in the environment, the world we're living in today, especially here in the States or even in Europe, is to have people who can stand up and not be afraid to speak.
To speak the truth.
To speak the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we went to Israel during this long process. We went to Israel like 2 or 3 times during these 12 years. But one time we hired this man he's a Christian. He's very prominent in Israel. And we asked him to take us through Yad Vashem, to give us a tour of Yad Vashem. And at the very end, we were just curious what he thought about the church during that time. So I just engaged him. I said, can you tell us a little bit about what would you say about the church, the Lutheran church, or any church at that time in Europe during the Nazis? Give it to me like a paragraph or two. He gave it to me in one phrase, and that was it. He just said, a colossal failure of courage.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
So, we were even more convinced that this would be a wonderful movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell us, obviously, you know everything there is to know about Bonhoeffer. Now, what's your favorite Bonhoeffer quote, or do you have a favorite Bonhoeffer anecdote or story?
Oh, there's several quotes.
Yes,
a lot of quotes. I mean, one quote that we both love. It's attributed to Bonhoeffer, but we actually can't find it.
I know the one, and it's my favorite as well. And it's
Silence
funny.
Silence in the face of evil
is itself
evil. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. So that became popular in Eric Metaxas's book, and incidentally, we went on to read lots of books on Bonhoeffer. Eric's is by far the most readable, in my opinion. Yeah. And we read a lot of, we did a deep dive into Bonhoeffer's works.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's why the movie's actually not based on Eric's book. And then, of course, Todd did some wonderful poetic licenses he took. But I think the other one is When Christ Calls a Man.
Yeah, when Christ calls a man,
he bids
him come and die not just physically, but die to
selfishness.
To selfishness.
That's in Cost of Discipleship.
In the Cost of Discipleship.
Yes.
That's right.
I have a question. Are you any plans to bring this movie to college campuses?
Well,
very good question.
Actually, we're talking to these organizations that are like, one has 1,400 colleges in it, and we're saying every young person should see this. Mm-hmm. And so we're asking them either to use their endowments to buy their students tickets, to encourage them to go, to get a pay it forward, to get, so that's how we're doing it. We hadn't actually thought about going to a campus because it really has to be shown in a theater.
Yes. Yes. And it's
a different.
Yes.
These are DCPs, as they call them. You have to show them.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Correctly.
You want it. Yeah. You want the show in a
like
movie.
The sound and everything else.
Yes.
You could have the whole environment. The whole.
Yeah. No, we totally agree with that.
The ambiance.
And that's really was one of the reasons that we were so happy to get our Jonas Dassler, our Bonhoeffer, is only 27 years old. I mean, now he's probably 28 or 29, but back then he was 27. So. Yeah.
And he looks like Bonhoeffer too, which is interesting. We
yes,
were told that by many people.
Very much so. Actually, that's how we're gonna end this interview. Actually, with going to the trailer to show the trailer.
Yeah, we're going to show the trailer now.
But we were so glad that we got to talk to you guys today. I mean, this is an amazing story, an amazing life that really so deserves a movie. I mean, extraordinary life, and will do nothing but good for those that get to see it. So we'll highly recommend it, and we'll be reminding people in November as well that when it comes out where it is and that they need to get tickets.
And maybe you could come back on the show before then to talk again.
Yes, anytime.
Thank you, anytime. Thank you for your for this interview, and thank you that you are you're promoting the right thing, especially the important issues here of our lifetime, the critical issues of our lifetime today. So anything to support that is so important.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So let's go to the trailer now. Thank you, Emmanuel and Camille, and we're going to go to the trailer now. Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. It comes out on November the 22nd. So let's go to that trailer now.
Something's coming. Something unstoppable.
Look around you, my friend. How much light do you see?
Hello, darkness, my old friend. with you again, because the visions of me left its seeds when I was leaving.
Hate comes in every color.
And the vision that was planted in me still remains within the sun.
We have devised a plot to assassinate the Führer.
You will go to England as our spy.
Churchill sees Germany as a whole. He's afraid that a bomb traced to England would mean invasion or worse.
Invasion? Invasion? My country was invaded from within.
And the people bowed in parade to the neon god they
Hi, Hitler!
In the sign flashed out his warning, and the words that it was forming. In the sign said the words on the prophets are written on the subway walls, in tenement halls, and whispered in the sun.
I'm ready to meet my destiny.
Of silence.
So we'll come back to this. Obviously, the movie comes out on the 22nd of November, but we'd really like to, and we haven't seen it ourselves yet. They sent us a copy, but we didn't get a chance to see it yet. But we're really looking forward to seeing it, and for everyone else getting to see it too, and to learn more about the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Quite the extraordinary story. Some of you know the story about the failed attempt, but the life and faith of this man is really something quite extraordinary and well worth reading.
So don't forget to put November 22nd into your calendar.
Yes, but we'll also remind people.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk briefly, and I wrote about this in our Substack, stories.io, which we'll put the link to up there. Eric Adams, I know very little. I know somewhat about the indictment, and I know little about the evidence that he's facing, but the more I read about it, I just believe Eric Adams, he's like the new Donald Trump. Now, Eric Adams...
So what did he do wrong, Phelim, to attract this, to become the new Trump?
Well, you know, on the face of it, he's a Democrat mayor of New York, but he's a conservative Democrat.
Okay.
And he's conservative in one particular way that is particularly damaging to the establishment and particularly damaging to the Progressive Project. He is against mass immigration. And that's only because all these Republican governors from the South bust the immigrants to New York. Now, I was in
Sanctuary City.
I was in New York for several days last week, and I was shocked by the criminal immigrants that are currently wandering around New York. And I was walking past this beautiful hotel, like one of those Art Deco, beautiful, the black and white tiles as you go in. And the guy said, on the Upper West Side, and the guy said to me, that hotel there, it's all housing immigrants now.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, you're looking at this beautiful building and you're realizing this is an asset lost to the state of New York, but there's a criminal heavy atmosphere, people hanging around street corners, people looking to cause trouble, not to be doing good in New York. So
I think it's worth, before you go on with that, actually, it's worth, because we were going to do this later, but it's actually worth, because Phelim, when I talked to Phelim and he was in New York, he was saying that he really, felt that he was looking in the face of people who were like deeply dangerous and scary and criminal.
Yes.
And it's worth mentioning, maybe just to
after this,
when you were there, we didn't even know this, but ICE have released information that they have, unbelievable. They've given the numbers on who exactly are these people who have been allowed to walk across the border, unstopped by anyone. And their numbers are quite extraordinary. I'm going to put this up. This is from Fox News, and you can see the screen grab from Fox News there. 13,099 of the people, 13,000 of the people who have crossed over and are walking around freely in the United States have been released are convicted murderers. Convicted murderers are walking around the streets. They're potentially in your neighborhood. Also, 15,811 convicted of rape or sexual assault are in Los Angeles or in New York, particularly in the cities, Chicago. You know, they're walking around. So when you had that feeling, Phelim, it's because of all of them, 425,000 are convicted criminals. 425,000 convicted criminals are walking around.
That's what I felt when of course,
you said it. No, you said it.
I
You
felt
really did.
13,000 murderers, 15,000 of sexual assault, and there was just this, and it's like I've been around, like I've been in dodgy countries. We've been in dodgy places.
This was different, and you love. Phelim loves New York.
I love New York, and it was just something. I was thinking, and it's like, you feel kind of slightly ashamed of yourself for having this visceral reaction to foreigners, but these were criminals.
That's the fight and flight, instinct. That's the actual, that's your body reacting to the fact that there's something dangerous in the neighborhood. But anyway, let's get back to
Adams as opposed to this, Kamala, who was Kamala, who was the border czar. She. This is the big thing. Trump won because he ran on the border in 2016. We're going to build a wall. Who's going to pay for it in Mexico? By the way, Trump didn't build the wall, and I think that's why he lost the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Immigration is a big topic in this election.
Sure.
Adams has been one of the most vocal voices about opposing mass immigration, even though he initially was in favor of sanctuary city. When it came to his city, he realized this is a disaster. So therefore, the FBI and the DOJ investigated him. And I'm not saying he hasn't broken the law, but he's broken the law in ways that other people break the law and are allowed to correct the record and make amends without a 97-page indictment or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, he was charged with breaching a New York law that prevents corporations or businesses giving money to politicians running for elections. My question is, why should there be restrictions on who gives money to a politician, as long as people see who is funding the politicians? Why are unions allowed to give when why are some taxpayers? Because these corporations, they probably pay more tax than most of the residents of New York.
Yep.
Why are they not allowed to support politicians and others are? I wonder, is it even illegal under Citizens United? Has the Supreme Court tested this law? He's also, under indictment for passing off illegal foreign campaign contributions from Turkish businessmen, and using them, so the Turkish businessmen would who have businesses in New York. This thing about foreign donations, these are people like you and me, Anne, who have lived in America this Turkish guy, he's lived in it a lot longer. We've lived here almost 20 years. Have we paid hundreds of thousands in tax? Or
I don't know, a lot.
Yeah, when you count property tax, sales tax,
totally,
and income tax.
Yeah,
and we used to have companies, corporation tax. But we're not allowed to donate to a political candidate. It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. But then he's accused of, so in New York, if you donate $1, the state will give in $8 matching, right? It's matching funds.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course, so of course it's incredibly lucrative, but it's ridiculous that the state is getting involved, because that's just a way, by the way, of ensuring incumbents get reelected. Because if you look at the candidate who's running in opposition or the incumbent who has the power and the image and the name recognition, you're going to support the incumbent because he's powerful, and the incumbent's going to go, so do you want to support me?
Mm-hmm.
So this matching funds idea supports the establishment. Right? It should never have existed. So maybe he's broken a law, but it's a stupid law. It's probably an unconstitutional law, and it's a law that supports the establishment. So, but they got him on that. And then he got upgrades on. This is my favorite. He got upgrades on airlines to business class. Now, you and I, we've met a few barons in our time, baronesses. I remember we've met a few ladies, and we've met a few important people,
titled people.
And one thing we know is they can either book business, or what they often do is book economy and arrive at the airport, and suddenly they're shocked and surprised to find they're upgraded to business. And of course, all these important people, they know that they will be upgraded to business once they arrive at the airport.
Yeah.
It's just the way of the world. And it makes sense for the airline. They want to do it. They also, it makes sense for security. It just makes sense. That's the way of the world. So Eric Adams, he could have, the mayor, imagine, now the mayor, people can decide to travel economy for political reasons and say, I want to be in with the people, or they can, for security reasons, they can go into business. So he was getting free. His problem was he was asked, and he sort of maybe did a quid pro quo. But what was I love this. What was the quid pro quo for the gifts?
Oh yes, I know what this is. Yep.
So the Turkish consulate had built a building in New York, and the president was arriving over. Now, the fire department of New York, what they do is they inspect your building, and they say, you need to fix this, you need to fix that, you need to fix this, you need to fix that. But here's a temporary fire certificate, and you've got a year to fix it. That's what they always do, right? Of course, being a bureaucracy, the waiting list for this is, a year. And the Turkish businessmen or officials approached Eric Adams and says, can you speed up this certificate process? And he phoned the fire department and said, look, can you go? And they went, and they gave them a temporary fire certificate. So he speeded up the bureaucratic process. Everyone who's listening to this at some stage has phoned their local councilman, their local senator or congressman for some, a passport or something. This is what politicians do. Now, whether politicians should do it or not, listen, they have a whole...
If only government worked efficiently, then they wouldn't need for any of this.
That's right.
Yeah, but obviously people...
I think, yes.
Yeah, people needed that, and as you say, the president was
arriving. And that was the beginning and end of the quid pro quo. Him assisting, this... A speeded up fire certificate, and meanwhile the FBI, and there's other, either made up crimes or crimes. And by the way, the Supreme Court was very strict on this, that not every dirty deal that a politician does is criminal. I mean, you still don't believe me. I think you don't believe me when I say the Supreme Court decided the Bridgegate, Chris Christie, that lump of useless
moving on.
rhino, Chris Christie, his staff closed a bridge between New Jersey and New York, caused massive traffic jams, stopped ambulances from getting to people. People may have died. They were prosecuted for it, convicted, and the Supreme Court said this is not a crime because it's just dirty politics.
Yeah, I definitely suffer. I definitely have difficulties with that. But I think the better description or the better comparison with what's happened with Mayor Adams is, the DOJ and all of these, three-letter acronyms were after Mayor Adams. Meanwhile, basically everyone knew that Hunter Biden, was being paid a ton of money from Ukraine, while his father had the actual, portfolio of overseeing what was happening in Ukraine. His son was getting millions from the Ukrainians for a job that he was incapable of doing because he was so high on drugs all the time. According to his own book, he took, what was the name of the drug that he took? What was it? Whatever it was, some drug that he was taking, but he took it every 20 minutes.
Crystal meth. No, meth.
It wasn't meth, but it was something, whatever he took it every 20 minutes. So, the idea that he was going to give some value to the board of Burisma, this energy company in Ukraine, complete nonsense.
And he was getting millions from Romanian, Chinese, Russian, state-owned or state-influenced organizations.
Yeah, but Mayor Adams, is getting that fire permit for building so that the president of Turkey can come and make a speech.
Yes,
obviously,
literally cut a ribbon. Literally,
yeah. I mean, this is obviously this is what you need. The whole of all of the acronyms, all of the three-letter acronyms need to be involved in that.
And I think to get back to the comparison with Trump, if I walked out on the street now and asked 100 people, they could not tell me what President Trump was convicted of in New York. They added a misdemeanor to a out-of-date misdemeanor to whatever to this
to a bookkeeping error,
yes,
or a book or an inaccurate bookkeeping situation,
possibly inaccurate,
possibly,
and came up with 34 felonies, and it's like, So look, the message is going out: don't cross Kamala.
Yes.
Don't cross the establishment. Don't cross the
Or
swamp.
we'll throw every acronym at you. All of the 3-word organizations
Yes.
will come after you.
Yeah. So let's talk. I mean, we talked about October 7th before, but you've seen the you've seen
The
who
recent
knows
development
who
of
knows
what's happening with Lebanon.
By the time this podcast comes out, it could have even escalated more. But at the moment, it's escalating. But it didn't start with the pagers. It didn't start with the walkie-talkies.
No.
When we were in Israel last November, we met Douglas Murray.
And Douglas Murray had a hotel, and we went to visit him at the hotel, and we couldn't get over it. The whole lobby of the hotel he was staying in was filled with, there were children running all over the place. And we knew there was something weird about the people that were there. And basically, they were all refugees from the north who had literally had to drop everything and go to Tel Aviv to try to escape the bombardment from Lebanon. So these recent events in Lebanon are, that's what they're connected to. But
Yes.
of course, you probably didn't hear about that before.
No, but even then, Douglas was saying this is the untold story that over 100,000 people had fled from northern Israel. And by the way, these are genuine refugees, not like the fake ones that are in the hotels in New York.
Yes.
So there was 100,000 people, and Douglas is saying this is the untold story, and this is a story that's not going away. And he was warning about it then. And of course, none of the real journalists were listening because they are all motivated by anti-Israeli animus. And they suddenly they're now pretending like Israel's attacks on Lebanon have come out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, completely out of the blue.
There have been 11,000 rocket attacks
Yeah.
since October 7th coming from the north. Imagine if you, whatever state you were in, and the neighboring state fired 11,000
Yes.
rockets at you. Do you think you might get your National Guard and go in and...
You think there might be some kind of response?
Yes,
Yeah.
but Israel's responding. Israel is never allowed to respond. Israel is never allowed to defend itself. And when someone tells you about Israeli genocide or aggression, remind them of the 11,000 rockets, the 100,000 displaced people. Hezbollah redesigned the northern Israeli border. That, talk about ethnic cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is the untold story, and you need to learn about that story. And we're glad that we were there, and we know for a fact that these 100,000 refugees existed.
But again, it's please, we're coming to the end of the show, and we just want to ask everyone again, if you are thinking about donating to help us bring the October 7th play to a campus near you, if you were thinking about it, stop thinking about it and just do it, please.
Yes.
It's expensive. It's costing about 70,000 to go to each campus. And to put that in perspective, by the way, famous speakers who go, which is an individual, like if one individual's famous speaker goes to a campus, it's 50,000 to 100,000. It's a huge amount of money. So we're talking about 14 actors. This is a very big deal, and very hard to organize. You need a producer. You need directors. You need stage directions. You need
sound,
props,
lighting.
sounds, lighting. So it's kind of a massive production rather than just having a speaker. It costs about 70,000. We would really like to do this all over the country. We've been getting requests from everyone. Please help us get to do that. And you can do that, and you can help us by donating. And you can go to october7theplay.com, october7theplay.com, donate often
and
frequently.
early.
And if you know anyone else who could donate, please ask them to do so too.
Yes, so that's october7theplay.com.
And next week we will be bringing you all the action and all the excitement from the play that will be happening on October 7th, which is on the anniversary. So it's a very special.
Yeah.
We're very, very pleased that this is going to go and happen, because it couldn't be a more perfect day on which to have the play happen and at UCLA.
Yeah,
so we'll have all the news.
I have to say the stage reading is almost more. It's incredibly powerful. Like, I found myself welling up while watching a play that I helped write. I did all the interviews. I sat through 30 performances in New York. I thought, I could practically recite it in my sleep. And then I just when I went to Princeton and I was in the audience, I was thinking, I'll sit at the back and kind of, not quite go on my phone, but I can zone out. And then I thought, no, I can't do that. I have to sit near the front so that I see how other people experience it. But I was dreading it because I was going to go, I'm going to appear bored, and everyone else is going to go, why is that guy yawning? I was not bored. It's an amazing, amazing show.
Because it really focuses on the words of the witnesses, of the people that we spoke to, the testimony of those who lived through that awful day. So anyway, that's the end of the show for today. And as I said, next week we'll bring you all of the excitement and the reaction that we get from people who've gone to see the play in UCLA. So until then,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey!